Hi, I want to take a minute today and talk to you guys about the Mayflower and the Mayflower Compact. So what we have with this document of the Mayflower Compact, we have a group of people who, had been fleeing what they considered persecution for some time. They still, though, are bound to both the King of England. They had to get his permission to come to North America, and they were bound by their financiers because remember, they were poor people. They had not been allowed to really gather any wealth. So they had to get financiers. In this case, it was the Company of Merchant Adventurers of London, who were paying basically for this journey, and they were supposed to pay them back. Remember, this is a very common kind of setup. You have companies who invest. You go, you hopefully will find some sort of, resource, whatever that resource may be, that will, grant them money. What ends up happening, of course, they get blown off course due to storms. You all have seen maps, and you know that Massachusetts is far to the north of Virginia. And so when they land and they realize, okay, well, we're not in Virginia, so we're not in a British territory. We are not where the king thinks we're supposed to be. We're not where the company thinks we're supposed to be. So as far as we're concerned, we don't owe them anything. That's basically what happened. The Scrooby separatists decided that they were no longer bound by these agreements, that they didn't have to follow anything that they had promised that they would do to either King James or to the Company of Merchant Adventurers of London, because it's wilderness territory, so it doesn't count. They named their settlement Plymouth. So that's basically how the settlement got started. But they still decided, we still need something to govern us. They weren't, anarchists. They wanted to have some sort of rule set up. So the Mayflower Compact is the first governing document of Plymouth Colony. It's not, again, a long document. It's described as a civil covenant designed to allow the temporal state to serve the devout citizen. So it is set up, again, as a theocracy. It is not a democracy, it's a theocracy, and it's called a plantation covenant. So you have what it's basically considered a plantation, not really in the same way of Southern plantations if you're thinking of kind of the slave-holding economy of the South, but this is called a plantation covenant. So it's supposed to protect the rights of the citizens, so the Scrooby separatists, both from the established government of England as well as, France or Holland or any of these other countries that may want to establish a claim there. They're basically putting their stake down and saying, this is ours, we were here first, and you can't put a stake here because we have a government. That goes to this idea called the Discovery Doctrine. So the Discovery Doctrine, it's basically, I was here first, but, in a legal system. And that's how Europe worked at the time. They didn't count the natives because they didn't count as people. They othered them. But they basically said whatever first white people got here owned it. But they had to have a government there. It couldn't just be like a random person. It had to have a governmental system in place. So by establishing this kind of, compact, this plantation covenant, they're able to say, see, there's a governmental system here under the Discovery Doctrine. We have claim to this land. You can't touch it. And it also allows them to, establish their own, basically, laws so that they can finally have the control and rule over their own people that they have always wanted to have. Again, it's not democracy the way we think of it. Only the men wrote it. The women and children weren't allowed to sign it. They couldn't vote on it. So it was the 41 male adult passengers who had anything to do with this. But what's really, really important about the Mayflower Compact is it's the first democratic governing document in what is now the United States. Even though we don't really think of it as democratic in the same way that we would think of democracy today, because not everybody was able to participate, and it did establish essentially a theocracy, it was still a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and it is the first time that happened on this soil to, in a system that we recognize, not counting the indigenous populations.